Hi, I'm Anthony from Sydney Backyard Veggies. August for me is a big month for late season brassicas. I have a number of plantings of cauliflower, broccoli, and Chinese cabbage in my ground at different stages of their growth. And today I'm just going to go through and show you how I go about looking after each of those plantings and what fertilizers and what general maintenance I add to make sure they grow to their potential. So I'm over at my third planting of cauliflower, and this is about 6 weeks in now, so they're ready for their second side dressing. I will come through and for these plants give them just a little handful of chicken manure pellets and to just do a bit of healing around in the soil. That way it just gives them a bit more support as they're growing, but also keeps the weeds down and adds that little last bit of nitrogen just as they are starting to form their heads. So first things first, I'm going to come through and add my chicken manure pellets. Before I start applying my side dressing, what I'm going to do is to come through and, as you can see on these plants here, try to remove all the weeds around the base, but also remove these lower leaves. As you can see here, these lower leaves end up being points for disease to come through to the plants, but also pathways for slugs and snails, which I'm trying to keep to a minimum because they do destroy these plants pretty quickly. So as I'm going through, I'm going to do a bit of weeding, get rid of all this chickweed, get rid of the lower leaves, and then also add in the fertilizer. So as I'm coming through each of the plants, I'm just taking off the lower leaves. Doesn't hurt the plants. Got to get the first lower leaves, especially the ones that are touching the floor. Then I come through and remove all of those weeds. Get a fair bit of chickweed growing through. And winter grass, just getting rid of now. Then I just add, that's my chicken manure pellets. Just add a little pour just around the base, just that much, and that's it. Then I just keep working through the rows. So I've finished pruning off the lower leaves and adding my side dressing. Now what I'm going to do is actually move the soil in the center line, in the center row between the plants up against the stem. And what that does is actually a bit of extra support around the base of the plant. It really keeps it upright during the windy weather, or as the plant actually, the head starts to form. It actually supports it a lot better. And I find that it generates a better overall better harvest when you do that. So I'm going to come through now with my hoe and actually just gently move that soil across, and then what I'll do is I'll use the back of a rake just to firm it up around the base. Ideally, if you can get in there with your foot and compress it with your shoe, it's even better. The firmer the soil around the base, the better. They really do like it. So I'm going to come through and do that right now. Okay, so now that I've healed the soil around the plants, what I've done is I've got the rake and I've actually compressed the soil around the base of the plants just to really firm that up. And what you'll find now is that the plants will thrive a lot more. Personally, I feel that's the case. That is the end of the fertilizing for these plants. They will be good from now on. that last application is just enough just to push them over into their final growing stage and into their harvest. So yeah, I'm looking at a harvest of my cauliflowers here on the right in mid-September, and the broccoli is just the last row of broccoli there in about, I'm thinking 4 to 5 weeks time. So I've moved over to my later planting of broccoli. These 2 rows here, 8 plants, were planted 4 weeks ago, and at this stage of their growth, I like to add a lot more nitrogen in their side dressing. So what I'll be doing here is I'll be adding sulfate of ammonia. It's just a granular fertilizer that you can add, and it really gives those plants a real kick of nitrogen that they need at this stage. Well, first what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come through and clean out all these weeds. The chickweeds take over my garden during winter. I'll clean them up. Then what we'll do is I'll add the fertilizer, water it in, and then I will wait for a few more weeks before I hill up these lots. So I finished weeding the bed, knocked out most of those weeds. I will come through and I'll pull out the weeds around the base of each of the plants, but generally speaking it's all done. So what I do now is add a little bit of sulfate of ammonia, as you can see right there. Look, I don't add a lot, but I find for brassicas, especially broccoli, they really do benefit from that high nitrogen levels that you get out of these kind of products. I have used chicken manure and so forth, but I can't get the levels I need here. So what I'm doing is I'm just adding a little bit. You've got to be really careful with this stuff. This will burn your plants if it touches directly. But what I do is just sprinkle in between the plants and then I water it in. So I'm going to go through and just do the rest of them now as well. Okay, so once I've added that fertilizer, I've given it a really good watering, making sure that the fertilizer is dissolved and it's spread evenly amongst the plants, and they will be fine for now. So in another 2 weeks time I will hill them, but that boost of nitrogen, you'll see them grow exponentially over the next 2 or 3 days, and it really helps the broccoli put on a bit of size, and that's what you need to get the larger heads. So really happy with that. That's done. That job's now done, and I'm going to go look at some of the other plantings that I have out in my garden. So I'm over at my latest planting of cauliflowers, and I'm actually starting to harvest at the moment. What I do at this stage when I'm looking after my crop is I make sure I keep the water up to them, and I watch the plants daily to see when is the optimum time to harvest. Generally, I like to harvest my brassicas in the morning, and I find that they store better that way when I harvest them in the cooler weather. What I do a few days before harvest is I make sure I do one final spray of white oil just to knock off any of those aphids or caterpillars that you generally get in the plants, especially as the weather warms up. So I'm just going to go now and show you what signs I look for when I come to harvest my cauliflowers, to how you know when they're ready at the optimal time for harvest. So when I'm looking at my cauliflowers, what I'm really looking for is large firm curds. I'm not looking for, if you start seeing the curds start separating, especially around the perimeter, that's gone a bit too far and you should harvest it straight away. At the moment this one looks quite good actually. There's no separation. It's got a good size to it. The curds are large but still tight. So this one's ready to go. This one's today would be the ideal day for the to be harvested. So I'm going to harvest this one right now. So when it comes to harvesting, I essentially just cut it straight from the base. Cauliflowers only supply one head. They don't do any side shoots. So once you harvest the head, these plants are done. They're spent. So what I'm going to do is just take through and just cut it off at the base. There you go. So I'm going to come through, just clean up these leaves, take off all the leaves. I tend to like to keep some of the smaller leaves on it, but generally speaking, all the larger leaves get removed now. It just makes it easier to deal with the plant, with the harvest, rather than being covered in major leaves. I'm just going to clean up the leaves, removing all the, these will all get fed to the chickens, so nothing's wasted in my patch. I generally don't keep the leaves, not a big fan of eating them, so happy to add them to the chickens' green feed. There you go. So I'll just come through, I will take off the base, give it a bit of a wash. I just take a bit of that dust off it, and then store it in the fridge, wrapped in a paper towel in a plastic bag, until I'm ready to use it. And I'll probably end up using these over the next few days. So there you go, perfect, beautiful. There you go. 3 heads of cauliflower harvested for today. These will go inside now, get washed, get bagged, and straight in the fridge. So just as a bit of an update, I'm here at my cauliflower patch. Just a week after I did the healing and adding additional fertilizer. And they're looking great. They've come along the way. I've actually started to see some heads showing up on the broccolis, which tells me they're about another week to go before they are ready to harvest. So glad that I'll be able to have fresh broccoli again for dinner. Thank you everyone for joining me in this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.